Good morning, everyone. So I will start now with the third lecture for the course for Applied Probabilistic Machine Learning. And this lecture aims at digging a little more into the details of the EM algorithm. And so as a reminder, this will be also concerned with a set of exercise we will see on Thursday, which will be application of this EM algorithm. So what are the learning goals for today? We want to I wanted to give a more general overview about the application of the EM algorithm, a little more general than what we saw last week. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to justify a little the technique we use. So why the EM algorithm working, and on which type of what is the mathematical ground to make it work. And so that will give us also the occasion, the opportunity to see how one can design in general, a EM algorithm. We will do that on a special case, but you will see the formulation is quite general. And then we will run again EM on a simple example where we have missing data. So two typical applications of the EM algorithm are cases where we have models, but we don't observe everything. So we are missing some part of the observation, but we want to find the parameters of the model, so the maximum likelihood estimates. So to maximize the likelihood, in the case where either we don't see some variables, so we call that latent variables, and this is what we saw with a mixture model, or we have missing data, and this is a very common case, which are recommender system, which I will show shortly just afterwards. So just to summarize what we saw last week with a mixture model, what is the idea is that we want to take into account the fact that the data can be heterogeneous, there can be some hidden heterogeneity in the data, and that this data is related to a categorical variable z. So which is hidden, of course, we don't see. And this is the example we used here. So let's imagine we have two-dimensional values of height versus weight in humans. And we can see that it looks like it's a combination of two-dimensional Gaussian. But if we don't have, for instance, the gender of the people which were measured, we don't really know to which of those Gaussian this corresponds. And we saw that last week that mixture model is a very simple and let's say simple to formulate and general framework which can be used to do clustering. And this model works like that. We have two variables. We have z, this hidden variable, which determines the class, and then conditionally on the class, we can draw the observation x, where the parameters depends on the class. Okay, and so here it's just the slide from last week, where a Gaussian mixture model with two classes and in dimension 2 is summarized. So let's see another example, which are a recommender system. And I guess most of you are famous with that, because you encounter that now every day. So it's a general, let's say, machine learning problem, recommender system. And the problem is to be able to predict for certain for a customer, given on its what he liked previously, or it's what he bought previously, what he would like to buy in the next step. And so you get that, for instance, when you browse for shopping on Amazon, or one of the famous examples was the Netflix prize, where Netflix had a huge database of ratings of movies. And the goal was to predict for a new customer, based on the ratings of previous movie, which will be the movie we would like the most. And so just to summarize what is the setup on a very simplified example, let's imagine we have four people, Arno, Bill, Christian, Derek. They all rate movies. And we have the rating of all those people together for different movies. And so let's imagine that Derek want to watch a movie, want to watch a new movie, and we know the movie already. So which can we predict the movies where it would most likely give a very good rating out of all the movies that there were? And the idea is simply that if we could use the knowledge about how people rate the movie together, and use the fact that maybe Derek tends to like the same movie as Arno, but he usually dislikes movie that maybe Bill and Christy prefer. We can use this joint information to be able to give a recommendation to Derek on the next movie he should watch. And so that's a very general problem, where you can also call that collaborative filtering, so that you filter using the collaborative information, you filter the data. Okay, and so here in this very simple case, I mean, we can use a simplified model to look at this problem and saying, okay, let's look at the joint distribution of the rating of all those persons. So I have 4 possible rates for each person, and I just want to be able to compute the posterior probability of the rating of Derek for a given movie, given the ratings I got from Arno, Bill, and Christy. Okay, and so you see the amount of parameters you have to estimate for such a model is still already relatively high. So we have 4 possible ratings, 4 possible rates, and we have 4 people giving ratings. But we want the we know that the ratings sum to 1 for each combination, so we have a total of 192 parameters to estimate. And so how could you estimate these parameters? From the table, just to give an example, it's relatively simple. Let's imagine I have the combination of rating 1, 3, 2 from Arno, Bill, and Christy, and I want to know what's the probability that Derek will give a 4. I mean, it's the number of times I saw the rating 1, 3, 2, 4 divided by the number of time I saw rating 1, 3, 2 from Arno, Bill, and Christy respectively. And so here, of course, it's a toy example. This will be estimated into 1/2. And we can so write a general formula. Here you see it's this the parameter we want to estimate, theta of A, B, C, D. So the rating from R. So this is the probability of getting a rating D from Derek, given that Arno gave rating A, Bill gave rating B, and Christy gave rating C. And this is simply, as you see, the maximum likelihood estimator. This is something we started to see last week when we looked on the sequences. The maximum likelihood estimator is simply the proportion, here in this case for the conditional probabilities, the proportion of the counts of where A, B, C, and D are observed together, divided by the total counts, which correspond to the same context. Okay, so but the problem we have is in practice is that, of course, so we have a lot of parameters to estimate, so we need a lot of evaluation, at least 2,000 of a full matrix. So if we want to have just 10 observation per combination, and so that means that we need a lot, and so that means that we need to have people that will have rated a lot of movies. And in fact, it's not the same. There is a lot of missing data because we cannot expect that all of our users will have watched and rated all of the movies. And so, just to give an example on the Netflix data, the data they proposed for this challenge that was set up like more than 10 years ago, that were 500,000 users, data from 500,000 users, which rated 18,000 movies, but only 1% of the entries. So the matrix was really, really sparse. Only 1% of the entries were observed. So in practice, those recommender systems, they have to cope a lot with missing data. And so you have, of course, many techniques which have been developed in practice to cope with that. Here in our case, we can see so that the main problem, we would like to have a way to do the estimation in the presence of data that are not observed. So how could we estimate those probability given that some of the data is missing? And so to do that, we can divide the data into two types for the X. So we have the observed data. For instance, for X1 here, the first movie, we have a rating observed for. Sorry. So we have so we observed RA, RC, and RD, but RD is hidden. And for Forrest Gump, we observe RA and RB, but RC and RD are hidden, etc., etc. So in this case, we can make multiple hypotheses on the way the data is missing. So it can be missing really completely at random. So there is no relationship between the fact that the data is missing and its position in the table. There can be, of course, more complicated cases, but we will not look at that now. There you can hypothesize that, of course, there is some bias in the way the data is missing. Okay, so with just two simple two examples which are like very archetypal application of VM algorithm. So the case of latent variables, which is well illustrated by mixture models. We will see over latent variables model in the following courses. And there is the case of missing data, which is, of course, which is a special case of missing variable, and we saw that for recommendation system. Okay, and so in both cases, you observe the variable X, and in the case of a mixture model, you have your latent variable Z. So how can you maximize your likelihood? You can say, okay, let's try to write the likelihood. If I write the likelihood, the log likelihood of my data, I take the logarithm of the probability of X given my parameters theta. And to be able to compute this probability, I need to enumerate over all possible values of this. But I need to enumerate, you see here, the sum over the Z value occurs within the logarithm. And that's very annoying because we cannot maximize. You cannot maximize this function as is easily. You need to enumerate over all possible combination of Z. So over all possible variable allocation. And that's what the AM algorithm is solving by proposing an iterative way of maximizing this value. So finding values of theta which are maximizing the likelihood of X given the parameters without having to estimate over that. And we saw that for the mixture model, we saw that last week. And it's the same framework when we have mixing data. It's just that we can see here our observation are independent, so we can directly write that the log likelihood is the sum of the log probability of each observed variable. But if we want to now compute the probability of each observation, we need to sum this probability over all possible values that the missing data could have taken, and they will reweight in the probability. And again, you see it's the problem is that the likelihood, the probability is inside the log, and we cannot maximize that easily. Okay, and so we'll see now how we can overcome that within VM algorithm by first seeing how we can find a way to maximize this likelihood of the observed data sequentially. So I just wrote we have a likelihood of the complete data. If we have a complete data, the log likelihood is the sum of the log likelihood of each observation. When we have the observed data, we need to enumerate of all possible value of a hidden parameter. So one first trick that we'll do now, and we'll see in the next slide why it's meaningful, is that we can factor. Of course, we can always rewrite our probability term and write a factor term at the numerator and the denominator, which is the same. So the idea of doing that is that if maybe we will be able to have this QI here to take it out of the log and find a value of Qi which makes this quantity easy to compute. And so that's what's the idea of VEM. But first you need to notice that as the logarithm is a concave function, the sum of the logarithm of linear combination of values, so here, so those are the scalar and those are the values, is always bigger than the sum of a linear combination of the log of the values. And it's called Jensen inequality that works for any concave function. And so what does it mean in terms of our log likelihood of the observed data? As you remember, we had the sum of the log of the sum over the hidden variables of a term we created. So this Qi, which we're factoring by another value, which is the likelihood. So we know that now the observed data, we have a lower bound on it, which can be written as the sum over all the data points, summed over the possible values of the hidden variable, multiplied by the log of likelihood divided by our normalizing factor. So now the trick will be that if we manage to have a value here, the ratio here which is constant, so which doesn't depend on xih, then this expression will factor directly, and we will have a sum over a ponderation of hidden values, and here a term which do not change. And so we need to obtain a term Qi that will, we need to find a term Qi so that our ratio will be constant. So we would like to have this Qi of the hidden value for xi, which is proportional to the joint probability of the hidden value and the observed value. But just remember, how do you write? According to Bayes' rule, the probability of observed and hidden value is simply the probability of the posterior of a possible hidden value given our observation times the probability of the observation. And in fact, here, what we observe do not change because we are making the experiment of estimating the likelihood with fixed observation. So if we take as Qi simply the posterior probability of the hidden value given the observed value, our term will factor, and they will, excuse me, they will always be, we will have solved our problem. And so in that way, we have our log likelihood, which is bounded as a lower bound from a simple linear combination of posterior probability of hidden values, so ponderation, over here a term which we will see is simply a log likelihood. So this is the idea with EM, is that we will we'll do that iteratively. We start with a set of parameters we initialize, and we sequentially compute posterior for the parameter we have at iteration t. We compute a posterior of the hidden over the hidden the missing data, the hidden variable given the observation for all of our observation, and from that we compute a conditional log likelihood of our observation, which is a function of theta. And you see here, so we compute a log likelihood which enumerates all possible hidden value that could occur, and each hidden value is reweighted, is factored by a term here, a q, which depends on the iteration. Okay, and then we just maximize this log likelihood over on theta, and so you see the theta term is here in the log probability. maximize this likelihood, and we can start again until the parameter converge. So let's just unroll this example over a simple example. Unroll the EM algorithm over a simple example with two binary random variable. I will take random variable A and random variable C. A can take values A or B, and C can take values C or D. And so the set of parameters we have, so probability, it's a matrix, it's the joint probability of the value for A, which can be A or B, and the value for C, which can be C or D. So we have the probability of having A and C, A and D, probability of having B and C, and B and D. So that means here that variable A has value B and variable C has value C. Okay, the sum of all those probability, it's a joint distribution. The sum of all those probability is equal to 1. Okay, so we observe. Let's imagine we just observe 5 example, sample of SAS 5, and we have 2 values that we didn't observe. So we have missing data here for x1 and for x2 over the variable C. We can see we always observe the values for the variable A, so we can already estimate the marginal over A, so the probability of observing A, independent of, so if we don't care about what we're observing for C, you see it's 3 out of 5. The probability of observing B is 2 out of 5. So let's try now to estimate theta, so those 4 parameters with the EM algorithm. So for the initialization theta 0, we can simply use what we observe from A. So we take 3 out of 5, which is 6 out of 10, and we divide it equally between theta A and C and theta A and D. And we have 2 out of 5, so 4 out of 10 for theta B, for the probability to observe A equal B, and we divide it into 2 over probability of having A equal B and C equal C, and probability of having A equal B and C equal D, so 0.2 and 0.2. So this is our initialization. So now we will perform the first iteration of the EM algorithm. So the first step is that we complete the missing data. So given our first parameter, we will compute the probability of the non-observed variable that they could take any of the possible values. So here you see we have the 2 first samples have hidden variable, and they can the hidden variable is correspond to the variable C. And so it can take value C or D for x1h, and x2h can take value C or D. So we can simply order the variable. We can store all those values in a matrix where we have, so we are at the first iteration. That's the term in this index, the superscript corresponds to the iteration. For the first observation, the probability that it's equal to C and the probability that it's equal to D. For the second observation, the probability that it's equal to C, given the observation, so given that we have a B, and the probability that it's equal to D, given that we have a B. So how do we compute those values? We saw that in the 2 first lecture. We'll just use Bayes' rule. Given the fact that we have our parameters, so we have our theta 0, which is the probability of each joint event, and so the probability of having, here it's written in vectorial form, so the probability of having, for instance, C equals C given A equal A, it's the joint probability of having A equal A and C equal C, which is 0.3, okay, divided by the probability of having A equal A, which is 0.3 plus 0.3, 0.6. and we can do that for all the other case. We see that here, because of the parameterization, our posterior, on the first step of the iteration, the posterior value for each of the hidden variable is 1/2. Okay, so now we need to compute the quantity we will maximize in the M step, so which is the conditional log likelihood at step t plus 1, here at step 1, of the observation. This is a function of our observation and of theta, which is the parameter we want to maximize this log likelihood on. So this log likelihood, as we just said, it's the sum over the examples of the sum over all the possible hidden value that the variable could take of so qtqi of t plus 1 times the log likelihood of this observation, so the complete observation we have in this case. Okay, so what does this mean in our case? Let's do the computation for each row, each value I. So for x1, we have A, which is equal to A, I equal 1, and then C can have for value C and D, so we sum here the Q1 t plus 1 of having C and Q1 t plus 1 of having D. And so, which are 0.5, we computed that in the previous slide. For x2, it is the same. The value is can take C or D, and the posterior 0.5 and 0.5. For the other examples, x3, x4, and x5, we only have one possible value, which is here D, D or C, and so they have a formal value of Qi of 1, and when we know the case which is taken into account, it's just TTIB. Here, those probability, so it's the parameter we want to optimize, is renormalized by 0.5. Okay, and so we computed the sum over those values, as I just said, which in practice act as ponderation. They weight each time the data which is missing. So we enumerate all possible missing data, and each missing data in the log likelihood is weighting according to its posterior, given the parameters at the iteration before, here theta 0. Okay, and we then have a very traditional log likelihood term, which is just the log here for a multi-Nui, it's the log of a parameter minus the log of our posterior, but we can see that those terms are constant and they will not play a role, so those are constant values, they will not play a role in maximizing this log likelihood, the complete log likelihood, as we will see directly in the next slide. So we computed this quantity to maximize, and we can update then theta as being the maximum over the parameters of this expected log likelihood. And you can see here, the only terms which depend on theta are here. So this is the function we want to maximize. The other are normalization. And as I just said, the M step is like a maximum likelihood, but each possible hidden, each possible missing data, each possible value, sorry, that the missing data could take, as a weight Qi, which is computed depending on the parameter of the previous iteration. So let's look for the iteration 1. We have theta 1, which is this argmax. So this value, it's as we said, the log of having jointly x, the observed and the hidden, and it's just the theta of the value which are taken by observed and hidden. Okay, and so that corresponds here for x1 When the hidden is C, it's theta AC. When the hidden is D, it's theta AD, etc. And so we can write the term we need to maximize for the log likelihood. As you see here, there is a constant. There are a lot of constants which go at the end, which correspond to this those log of 1 over qi. We can take them out because we are taking searching for the argmax, and so we want to maximize this function, which is 1.5 log of theta AC plus 1.5 log of theta AD plus 0.5 log of theta BC plus 1.5 log of theta BD. So which is so it's a four-dimensional function. We want to maximize under the constraint that the parameters sum to 1. And we saw that in the case of the Bernoulli distribution, where we have only two variables. The maximum of such a function is very intuitively the value for theta AC. This will be the scalar factor we have here divided by the sum over all the scalar factor. So if we sum all the terms, this is the number of samples, this is the size of our samples, so we have 5, so 1.5 plus 1.5, 3, plus 0.5, 3.5, plus 1.55, and so then the estimate of theta AC for 1 will be 1.5 divided by 5, so 3 divided by 10, the same here, 3 divided by 10, here 1.5 divided by 5, this will be 1 divided by 10, and here 3 divided by 10. And this is what we obtain as the maximum likelihood estimator. So this is what we obtain, not the maximum likelihood estimator. This is what we obtain by maximizing the likelihood at the first iteration. Then we can start again at iteration 2. We have our new value of the parameter. We can recompute each step, and I let you recompute those values as a small exercise. The exercise I gave also for the to prepare for next week is the same type of exercise. It's again a EM on a missing value for binary variables, so it's a very straightforward application of this example. And so I let you compute the fact that the posterior will be this one, those value and those value, and then at the M step we can again maximize our expected log likelihood with this term under this constraint, and we obtain a new estimates for the parameters theta, and we continue like that. And here, after convergence, because we can notice that there is something particular with theta BC, it's always decreasing, we will obtain the following parameter. This was just very basic, but I think it's very interesting to unroll EM on in a simple case to really get a grasp on what it's doing. Okay, so this was the goal of this part of the course. To summarize a little what we saw with EM is that we saw that the principle is relatively obvious. Is that we using Jensen inequality, we constructing a scheme where we are sure that each step we will increase the likelihood of the observed data. So we are ensured that EM, the likelihood will increase at each step of the EM. So we are ensured that EM will converge to a local maximum. And usually the convergence, when the number of parameters is not too big, the convergence is relatively fast. But we are converging to a local maximum, so we usually need to, it's a good thing, so the initialization of the parameters is important. And we can need to do a multiple random starting points. What is really nice with this EM algorithm is that, as you saw, we just need to compute posterior probabilities of our missing data or of our latent variables, and then we will maximize conditional log likelihood, which is in fact in a form which is really similar from a traditional maximum likelihood. So it's very easy with this framework to accommodate constraint on the data, constraint on the maximization, and to mix the fact that the information is missing or is partial for some variable, and we also have latent variable. So it's very easy to integrate this type of knowledge. And for me, this was, at least in the beginning, always very rewarding to see that we can specify relatively complicated inference problem, but if we can specify them with very structured models, so with a strong constraint in the way we expect the data to be generated. So although we never observe the hidden phenomenon, we are really able through EM to make a very good guess, and we are able to estimate all the parameters. So the inference works really well in giving us a way to understand what's happening with the data. Okay, but so as a, let's say, as a warning word, EM is really nice. It can be used in many cases, and this is what we will use most of the time in the following. But we still have a constraint that we need to be able to compute the posterior of the missing data or of the latent variables. And there are some cases where the latent variable space is too big, or the posterior is too complicated, and it's not possible to compute it directly. So EM cannot be used as such, and one needs to use then approximate inference, or so variational techniques, for instance, to be able to maximize the likelihood. But we will not look at that too much. So this was everything for the course of today. I hope you found that interesting. And please do not hesitate to ask questions through the forum, or to send me email if there are like some of the things which are which you find complicated, or some of the concepts which are problematic for you.